Thanks for coming, everybody.
It's like you're saying we're already done.
I'll see you later. Who's been to Indonesia? Anybody? Nobody.
Tell us anything and we'll believe it.
Oh yeah, it's just off the coast of California. It's easy. So here's Pat. I'm Dirk. Dirk is a good Dutch name. I got that from my parents. They're Dutch. They're from the Netherlands. Indonesia used to be a Dutch colony, and then the Japanese came by and disrupted all that. And then after the Second World War, my parents both found work in Jakarta, the capital city for the time being.
They actually made there.
A little personal.
My mother worked in the government or for the bank, depending which story you believe. And my father made trouble. He was with a different branch of the government. We're not talking about that.
Didn't talk about it in Indonesia.
So we've always had our family has always had Indonesian things around the house because my parents worked there, and so I've always been interested in Indonesia. I like Indonesian food. Where I grew up in Vancouver area, there was Indonesian restaurants, so I was familiar with the cuisine. And so when we retired, I said to Pat, well, we're going to Indonesia. And somehow she seemed to go along with it.
Well, she wouldn't be wearing it.
She was a bit nervous about that because it's almost entirely a Muslim country. And she thought, well, you know, I'm going to have to walk 3 paces behind or something like that. But no, it's really, I think that's only true in the very northern tip of Sumatra, where they're very strictly Muslim, and in Java certainly, and the rest of Indonesia, nobody really cares. They're not going to correct your behavior or anything like that. So part of my job now is to avoid winter in January and February. So that's when we went. So
Okay, should I start with the other slides? Or?
you can change the slide if you like.
Well, I just wanted to say, to get everybody in the feeling of where everything is. So Indonesia's down here. There's China and Australia. And then Southeast Asia, which we've also visited, is up here with Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam, etc., Thailand. And here's Indonesia there. And this is the Indonesia part where we travel. This is where we traveled during our Indonesian adventure. So we'll be talking about all these different
We
places.
took Singapore Airlines to Singapore and then to Jakarta. What a great airline that is.
Oh, okay, I was going to get to that at some point. But anyway, yeah. Okay, so my talk then was...
I can sit down.
You can if you want. I mean, you can talk anytime you want. Okay, quick overview. So Indonesia is the world's largest archipelago with something like 17,000 islands, about 900 are inhabited. The population is something like 278 million, but there's a lot of different versions on Wikipedia, etc. So it's the 4th most populated country in the world. And the temperature was pretty hot. 82, they say, is average, but we were in the 90s, I think, quite a bit.
It was, in many places, really hot and sweaty.
Yeah, but it was better than here in the winter. Their native language now is Bahasa Indonesian. It's a form of Malay. It evolved over in the 1900s.
Bahasa means literally language.
Yeah, so it's Indonesian.
Indonesia.
And there are 700 local languages, but all of the schools teach Bahasa Indonesian as well. So they're multilingual. These are interesting people. So how did we prepare? Lonely Planet is our guide, and this is well marked and used. So that's one thing, and because Dirk had been to Java, but there was a lot more we wanted to see. Another kind of funny one, but in Indonesia, you don't want to drink the water in hotels even. So I have a life straw, actually anywhere in Southeast Asia. I bring this along. You fill it up with water, and when you drink through the straw, it filters it. It's great. And so you can even, fill your mouth with water, spit on your toothbrush, brush your teeth, that kind of thing. So I never go anywhere in Southeast Asia without this. We got shots, and Dirk has some information about that later, which shots. And we took some online Babbel.com lessons. I learned a little. He learned enough to actually communicate with some guards when we were walking the wrong place.
That being said, language is not a problem in Indonesia because everywhere in the tourist trade, English is spoken.
Yeah.
And some people speak, German and French as well.
I wasn't going to do this one yet. So, and the other thing I wanted to mention is in terms of travel, of course, we prepared for warm weather, maybe with a windbreaker or something like that. We each had one of the smaller suitcases, and I had a backpack. And that was how we traveled for 2 months. Because you don't need much. There's local laundries everywhere. I did buy a few Indonesian shirts, as you can see hanging here along the way, but that was more for fun. Okay, so I just wanted to do a little Indonesian history. Most of the population came from India and China, and somewhere around the mid 500 CE, Common Era. Indonesia, especially Java and Sumatra, started becoming very important religious centers, such that in Java, peoples were coming from all over Southeast Asia to learn and be trained in Buddhism and Hinduism. But things changed a bit in the 1500s when it was discovered that Indonesia was a great source for spices. And so all the European countries came and started trading in Indonesia, but the Dutch East India Company in the early 1600s was given by their country. They took over as a monopoly on trade and colonial activities in the area. So they conquered Jakarta, renamed it Batavia. I said Tavia, which is wrong. And they ruled in Java and other areas around it for 200 years until they went bankrupt, and then the Dutch government took over in the 1800s, and it became a colony of the Netherlands until World War II, when the Japanese conquered Indonesia. And they were there until 1945, August 1945. Japanese were different. So the Dutch kept very separate from the Indonesians. They didn't want them to learn their language. And the Indonesians worked on their own language at the time. I don't know how their Bahasa Indonesian came about. When the Japanese came and took over, although they did a lot of cruel forced labor and stuff, they also allowed some of the Indonesians to participate in government. And they encouraged them to speak Bahasa Indonesian. They didn't want them speaking Dutch. And so when the war ended, the Indonesians were more prepared to declare independence. Oh, here's some of the Dutch properties I wanted to mention. And Suharto, did I say it right? Suharto became the first president of Indonesia, declared president. He was doing that from Yogyakarta, not Jakarta, because there was a continued skirmish or war, I don't know what you call it, with the Dutch who wanted to take the country back. But they were forced to give that position up in 1949, and it became an independent country. And this is a monument to Suharto and their independence. This is in Jakarta. So now Singapore Airlines. Now this is how do we get there, and what did we do? So at Jakarta, we started in Jakarta, and this was our first This is like the only fancy big hotel we stayed at, I think. And so it's the capital city, its own province. There's 11 million living in Jakarta, 23 million in the surrounding area, so it's really quite huge. But we could walk around the streets, and where we were staying, there were local markets as well as big hotels and such. So the first thing we did, besides getting into the hotel, was figure out the money situation. They have beautiful money in Indonesia. Well, a lot of countries do. And the interesting thing is that what's really hard to get my head around is 100,000 rupiah is equal to $7.20. Oh my God. So at the third or fourth day, we went out with some people, and they said, "Oh, try this costume on at this park, and it's only 100,000 rupiah." I went, "I can't spend that much money." And she bought it for me. And then later on, I went, "Oh, $7." Okay. So we also got a chip for our phone. We don't need to call people in Indonesia or Southeast Asia. It's texting or internet is how you communicate with people you're making contact with, or making reservations, or getting rides and things like that. And here's an example of the local market, which was a block away from our fancy hotel, and was a market that the Indonesians, used and sold in. Transportation, bajai, right? Bajai. Okay. It's a three-wheeled vehicle that we initially used, but we had a little trouble communicating with that particular driver, and we also used taxis while we were there. Motorcycles. Oh my gosh. This is a small example of the traffic in motorcycles in Jakarta. It's huge. And throughout the country, motorcycles is the main way of travel. And you'll see examples of four people in a family on one motorcycle. They also have our version of Gojek, like Uber. But so the green, if they have the green hoods on, that means they're probably a passenger on a Gojek. He's the guy. He's the word guy.
Uber for motorbikes.
Yeah. And it's very, very popular. Okay, so the people were very friendly. It was, in Jakarta, we were very popular because we're tall and white. So people wanted to take their pictures with us. It was really interesting. When we got to Bali, it was
all the time.
Yeah.
People wanted to have their pictures taken with us. They really couldn't understand it.
And also,
I told them I was Tom Cruise. Maybe.
That's it. That's the problem. And people also some people would come up and say, "Can I practice English with you?" or that kind of thing too. We met Dirk's, this is not a very picture, but Dirk's mother had a friend who lived in Edmonton, which is where they were living near. And so she was very friendly with us, and we met her, and she took us to a beautiful, where did I put the name of it, park called, there it is, Taman Mini Park. See, I should have highlighted some of these things. And outside of Jakarta, and it has examples of homes as they existed throughout the different areas of all those Indonesian islands. And like in Suwart, I'm not saying it right.
Sulawesi?
Yeah, Sulawesi. Yeah, anyway, some of the bigger islands, you'd see north, south, east, west kind of versions of the housing, but just beautiful different houses that it's just, the creativity was, and this is just a few of them. So they're very proud of their heritage, of where they came from, and of their country themselves. Oh, and Fridays, interesting, we learned at the hotel, Fridays are batik shirt days. And businesses request or require men to come wearing their batik shirts. And it's a sign, it's helping the country feel like one big country instead of all those different islands. Other memorable parts of Jakarta, this was the biggest mall I'd ever been in, and had entire floors dedicated to batik shirts and to hajibs. I mean, 1 or 2 floors just for hajibs. It's just amazing. And I thought this was kind of interesting, a cement building built with bamboo.
Not OSHA approved.
It's like, wow. We also wanted to see the harbor, and it turned out we went to a Dutch old town, they call it. So these are traditional buildings built in the 1800s, early 1900s for Dutch government. And our maps showed that the harbor was nearby. It wasn't that nearby. So we started walking. We came upon a very old Dutch bridge that could be raised, and then to a marine museum. And this man here, whose name I forget, was showing us around the museum, and there's some boats and spices and such, and said, "Would you like a tour?" Oh, and we had mentioned, we said, "Where's the harbor?" "I'll give you a tour." Wasn't the tour we expected. Want to talk about the tour?
Well, after seeing all the spices there that the Dutch were exporting from Indonesia, we went through the museum, along a path behind the museum, where children were playing in the local dump, which was, not much you can do. And then we went walking through the slums of Jakarta, and these people, smiling, are in the slums. Open sewer, so it didn't smell that good, but these people are nonetheless quite happy and smiling. Indonesian people are always smiling.
This is more of the walking through.
Yeah. And when I got to, and there's a little ferry. There was a canal or something, and to cross the canal, you could walk all the ways around, or you could, for a few rupees, take the ferry. And there's a couple of guys, and they pull on ropes, and the boat goes from one side to the other. And that's how they make their living in the slums.
So we made it to the harbor. Yay.
And that sort of boat there, which is called a panisi, is typical for Indonesian fishing boats, large fishing boats.
Right. And then, this is the poorer members of the
smaller fishing boats. Boats of this sort would go outside Jakarta to the outside the harbor, and they have platforms set up where they catch smaller fish. They have nets, and they have an arrangement whereby they lift the net, scoop up all the fish, and bring it back to the harbor.
And we continued our walk and finally ended up at in a Chinese temple.
Just when I thought I was going to melt in the heat, we had more to see.
It was not exact. We just didn't really know how to say, how long is this? Anyway, it was quite a memorable tour and very interesting. And I have a lot more photos, but Okay, so another day we went up the National Monument that I had mentioned earlier to get a view of all of Jakarta. And that was quite astonishing, how huge and big it is. Here we are up there. And on the way down, waiting for the elevator, they were pretty big elevators, a whole family joined us. And then they wanted their picture taken with us. And everybody smiling and happy and very friendly. I can't even remember if they spoke any English or if we always said.
The younger people typically speak some English. The older folks maybe not so much. But they approached us and said, "Well, can we have our picture taken?"
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I guess. I don't know.
Sure.
So are you able to share the picture with them, text it to them?
They had cameras, so we took each other's pictures. Yeah. And here's one of the many mosques that we saw in our travels too.
Yeah, that's a big one.
So next stop, again, thanks to the book and reading about things, we wanted to see orangutans, and there is a Tanjung Putan National Park in Borneo. Borneo being the 4th largest island in the world, and it's Indonesia and Malaysia and Brunei all have a claim part of it. So we flew from Jakarta to Pekanlan Bun up here. And it has a little airport. We stayed overnight near there. And the next day, we went down to the nearby town of Kumai. There, I remembered. And met our captain, Jenny. And this is our boat. You had to climb off one boat to another boat to another boat to get to it. And this is our deck. This is where we slept. And now we're going across the bay to the park. And Tang Puting. So this is so it's a reserve, and it's a place where they're saving the orangutan that are being pushed out of their environment because of the palm oil trees. And as we drove, a lot of Southeast Asia, but in Indonesia especially, they're just cutting down the forest, planting palm oil trees, and the wildlife is killed or pushed out. So
the orangutans really don't understand that they're not supposed to be in the palm trees, and so they are often killed, but they're pushed out of their habitat. And so on the other side of the river was this reserve, and it was also a rehab center where the orangutans could live and feed themselves when fruit was in season. And when fruit wasn't in season, then the reserve arranges for giant clumps of bananas to show up on the feeding platform.
So so it's a 3-day trip that we were on, and with a boat. Our boat looked something like that. It was just us and the crew of four. Okay, the cook, the
cabin boy,
the captain,
and there was another one. I don't know what
anyway,
deckhand.
So and they were down below, and we were on top. And there was a picnic table we ate at, and our bed.
The name of the boat is a klotok.
Klotok. Oh, I forgot that.
After the sound that the engine makes. It's a slow-moving diesel engine.
So now we're in the river or canal, heading toward the park where we'll be able to see the orangutans.
Were there mosquitoes or bugs?
I guess so. I mean, we had some mosquito nets for sleeping.
Oh.
You'll see a picture of that.
But during the day, I didn't...
There must have been a breeze or something. I don't remember, because we're moving
insect
to.
repellent or anything, so...
Well, you don't ever use it.
Well, I don't ever use it, but...
But I do.
I did take anti-malarial pills, which you're supposed to start 7 days before you go to a malaria-infested place. Pat didn't think it was necessary, but we both survived, so
Yeah.
that was lucky.
So again, it's just more beautiful scenery on our way in. And finally, we got to the first ranger station. We're on the dock facing into the land. And here are the docks that have been set up, and a number of boats will travel and be doing this at the same time. I don't think we were in the high season, so it wasn't that crowded. But it was after we came in and they were tied up, some of the deckhands would get together, and the reason I have a ukulele here is I didn't bring one, but the deckhands were playing a ukulele, and I play it. And I was like, oh, I need a ukulele anyway. So later on in Jakarta, I had to buy one.
What's the high season?
So anyway, so here we are, and then
High season is when the Australians are escaping winter. So January and February is their summer, and they don't go to
It'd be too hot.
Bali, except in the year we went, it was like 46 centigrade in Adelaide, so that was really hot. So indeed, some people were coming to Bali to escape the heat.
whereas we thought you're escaping heat here.
Yeah. So we were escaping the cold. So January and February are not the high season.
July, August would be.
I don't know. It's in the book. Okay, so this is the platform we would walk on to get to where the orangutans food is laid out for the orangutans. And we were told this was a teenager. And he looked like it when he was hanging in the tree like that. It was pretty cool. But while we were sitting there, over on the side, we could see a mother and their baby, and she wouldn't get near the teenager, the big orangutan, until later on. I wish I had a better picture, but so here's the mama with the baby on top, walking around. So that was pretty cool to see. And so we had a couple other stops too, but this was the best of the stops. And here's some of the rangers that were pointing out some vegetation to us. And we took a nighttime walk in the woods to see, I don't know, glowing insects or something. Anyway, and this is what our bed would look like at night with the mosquito net. Here, as we traveled along, we saw monkeys, various kinds of monkeys way up in the trees.
They have gray monkeys, long-tailed macaques, and then the proboscis monkeys. What's interesting with the proboscis monkeys is that the locals call them Dutch monkeys because they have a long nose.
Don't be looking at Dirk's nose or anything. Oh, this is just me waiting for the next thing. We did see a little bit of a crocodile once, but not much. Anyway, then we came, there was a village on our way as we were leaving, and they said, do you want to stop? And I said, yeah, we'll love to walk in the local village. So here's one of the photos I took while we were walking along the road. And it looks like sort of shacky, but it was very nice. And people on some of the road had decorations, they had lights. And later on we saw a school with the kids playing soccer in their uniforms. So it's not much different than here. It's just, I don't know, it was pretty interesting. So this is going back to the town of Kumai. We didn't look at it from this direction before when we were leaving. Tell them what these lovely brick buildings are.
So those odd buildings without any windows, you may have noticed, those are bird houses. And the birds fly in, they make their nests, and then the nests are harvested and sent off to China for bird's nest soup. Now, I don't know the recipe for bird's nest soup, but it sounds pretty exotic to me. Now, what happens with these is that they have speakers inside, and they play the sounds of birds chirping, so that wild birds just flying around the town say, oh, here's a good place to build a bird's nest. And they go inside and build a bird's nest. But they're always chirping, these houses, and they're always making noise. They're annoying to the locals, but
they're annoying to visitors
Chinese
too.
have bought up a piece of land and built a building to get bird nests.
Yeah. So we saw it a few other places too, but this was the most we saw altogether.
They're everywhere around Java.
So then also, we stayed overnight and we took a walk along the bay here. And as we were walking along, we saw this in the water. And
So
also we had gone to a laundry.
So there's a platform there with a little house on it. And I didn't think much of it, but we went to the hotel and we went to the laundry place and asked them to do our laundry. And the next day the laundry comes back and it's so perfumey, I could hardly wear the stuff. It reeked after perfume. So we were walking along there and I was looking at this and there was a woman doing laundry in the river. And that little platform there, that little house on the platform, is not a tool shed, that's the outhouse. Which is why your clothes are so perfumey when they come back.
I mean,
He said, well, ask somebody, why is it so perfumey? He says, well, it'll smell like the river. Well, yeah.
so that was interesting. We wore the clothes anyway. And then this young man we met took us to the Rainbow Village, which is a little ways down the way, and it was quite lovely. And I saw a family, and they were happy to have us take their picture, and they were sweet. And here's brave Dirk deciding he's going to go that way, even though the walkway isn't done.
Yeah.
Then we had to go to the airport and come back, and on the way we saw this
The
Sultan's palace. It's also in Kumai. It's up on the hill in a grand place. And there used to be a sultan living here and ruling here. Some of it's been maintained and it's quite beautiful. They had photos of all the different kings and princes. But the room next door is now a place for weddings. It's all decorated. People go and it's all decorated for that. But it was interesting to be able to tour through it. Okay, so where am I here? Let me just make this a little bigger. That doesn't matter. Okay, so now we were in, Kumai. We flew back to Jakarta, and then from Jakarta we wanted to go to Yogyakarta, which is kind of a college town. It's the second largest city in Java, and it's very near Buddhist and Hindu, famous Buddha and Hindu monuments. So we took a train, 8-hour train ride. So that, to get an idea of the distances here, 8-hour Yogyakarta is where we're going.
Where's regular Jakarta?
Jakarta is
Jakarta,
at
right
the
there.
west end of Java.
Okay.
Right there, so from Jakarta down to Yogyakarta. And it wasn't a slow train either, but it was a beautiful ride. This is the train. I was lucky enough to have, sitting on the aisle, the man on the other side of me could speak some English, and he had a son on the other side who was in school. He's like 14, and he said, "Oh, my son speaks really good English." And we changed seats. He's changed seats so I could talk to his son, and we had a really nice conversation. It was really fun, and we ended up, the first night we stayed in the same hotel, and then in the morning it was one of those breakfasts. What do you call it?
Buffet breakfast?
Buffet breakfast. But everything was in Indonesian, so I was asking his son how to, what's this and what's that. Anyway, he was really happy that his son had spoken to us English people. And here's just some views from the train. The beautiful rice fields, some villages, more rice fields. It's just a gorgeous country. And we made it to the Phoenix Hotel, which was the first sort of White House of the first president of Indonesia. He stayed here while they were battling and becoming a nation. And so we stayed there too. It was quite lovely. But I don't know, $60 a night or something like that, 70.
It was like 70, 75.
Yeah.
It was pretty pricey for Indonesia.
Yeah. And there's our hotel room and one of the lobbies areas. It's just beautiful. So then the next day we took a tour to see the famous
Borobudur.
this is the Buddhist temple of Borobudur that was built between the 7th and 9th centuries, and it's a place for learning and teaching, and the relief panels all around going up tell the Buddhist story, starting with Siddhartha, and houses about 500 Buddhas in it. It was abandoned in the 14th century as the Muslim world started coming in.
It is the world's second largest Buddhist monument.
Yeah, that's right.
Right in the middle of a Muslim country.
Right. And here's some of the photos. And this is an example of some of the reliefs that are telling the story all the way around. And Dirk, this is our guide, and Dirk's learning all about Buddhism.
Are there Buddhists that come to worship there, do you know?
I don't know if they still do. I didn't hear much about Buddhism. The Hindus moved to Bali, so that's a sort of a Hindu island, province. And I don't know, I think everybody's a little bit Buddhist or something. I don't. And I was reading about it, and in some of the articles about this era, the era of the building of the Hindu and Buddhist temples, they had Hindu/Buddhist temples. So, whereas in Cambodia, the Hindus and Buddhists were tearing each other's work out.
Right.
Okay.
In Cambodia, there was waves of Buddhism and waves of Hinduism, and they like to take over each other's temples.
And
The
ruin.
Hindus came by and chipped off the Buddhist carvings on the sides of the temple to make it more Hindu temple. Anyways, I think our watch is now just, I think it's Buddhist, right?
Yeah, a kind of Buddhism. This is just a lovely family that was there. I just thought they were having so much fun. And here's, a shot. Not posed or anything. And all these bells, all of them used to, they don't all now, used to contain a Buddha. So they're all over the place, and they all had a Buddha inside. It's the size of this and the walk, it's huge and beautiful. And that's the valley. So then we had lunch, and they went to Prambanan, the Hindu temples. So this is 30 miles away, and also this is in honor. It's built in the 18th century, 6th largest Hindu temple compound in the world, and area of rulers favored Hinduism and Buddhism at the different times. Anyway, there's many temples here, and also some ruins as a result of volcanic action and earthquakes. But also very, very busy and just amazing kind of construction for that time in our world. And all of this is stones that that are being rebuilt into temples as they can piece them all together. And there's Dirk. Ta-da! Oops, there. And there's Ganesha. Anyway, one of the many that we saw in the area. So it was pretty impressive. And another day in Yogyakarta, I was impressed with the open markets and the beautiful vegetables. I hadn't really seen that before, so now I see it more often.
Did you buy foods at all in the market?
I didn't have any place to cook. I could buy some nuts and things like, dried things. But it was just beautiful. Oh, and I was walking around town I was on the other side of the street shopping, and then I went across the street. Wait, these are all Dutch buildings in Yogyakarta. And here's me trying to squeeze. I'm kind of big for an Indonesian version, so I was trying to squeeze into this bike carriage for a little ride, and I did. And this is where we're staying, and the couple that we met, they're from Australia, and they actually gave us the name of a driver in Bali that we then used when we went to Bali. Here's my shirt. And then we went to Bali. So the next part of our trip was to fly from Yogyakarta to Bali to the city of Ubud. Ubud is called the cultural heart of Bali. It's kind of sort of more hippie, and it's I don't know what you've got, artistic. There's great fairs. There's a lot of interesting, beautiful places to walk and see. We were in one section of town, and we saw so much in that one section. It was amazing, without even needing a car at all. This is what we saw in the airport coming in. I thought that was so cool. And this is where we stayed, this little, villa bedroom kind of thing. But it was quite large. This is, I think, the place where we ate breakfast. This is our bedroom. I mean, huge. And what did we discover? It was like $40 a night or something like that. Maybe less.
It was about 30 actually.
Oh.
Yeah, it's going for $27 a night currently.
27 now?
Mm-hmm.
So Ubud was more in the country, more in the forest kind of area. This is our view from the sunset. I mean, so we also had a lot of property there. It's just really nice. So the next day we took, the man who picked us up at the airport took us to Ubud, gave us, I think it was the next day we went on a tour with Amor. And there's sites, of course, they like to show off. So this is a beautiful waterfall area, and very enjoyable. Look at these interesting, And it turned out there was some kind of photo shoot going on. And little places to walk and challenge yourself. It was really lovely. All right.
Nice.
And then we went to a rice field. A lot of rice fields. But so, this is a kind of a touristy rice field where you could actually participate. And they had some fun things for people to sit in. But it's one of those rice fields, rice paddies with different heights, terraced rice fields. Then we went to Mount Batur, right? I got that right, Batur. This is a dormant volcano, I think. Still.
Well, there's a pretty good gas vent on the top of it.
Okay.
But nonetheless, people are farming in the crater, and there's a village, and there's a lake, and there's a village on the opposite side of the lake within view of the village that's there. where they don't allow chores whatsoever, and they live in the old ways.
Yeah. And one other trip, I'm not sure if it was this one, I wanted to show you the Balinese, Hindu Balinese water temple, a Tirtha Empul temple. And people come there to have blessings. These are typical blessings that you see along all the roads and restaurants and things. There's usually a dish with some palm tree and some fruit. And so this is, I don't know if these are bringing them to them, but they're getting blessings. And this is we saw a couple of these a couple times.
They wash away their sins and such. And they line up at the first one, and then they wash their head, and then they go to the next one. They have to wait in line and wash their head. And each one, I think, is for washing away a different sort of sin. That's what I got out of it.
What religious tradition is
Hindu.
that?
Hindu.
Yeah, Bali is almost entirely Hindu, 90%.
There's some Muslim schools. So this was interesting. We were just walking around town, walking around a corner, and went, what's this? It was a bird singing contest. What I don't have a picture of is all the gambling going on toward the edge of the bird singing contest.
The gambling on which bird would sing the best?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Like a horse race.
Yeah. And no, we couldn't tell really.
We
one bird
didn't
from
see
another.
anybody actually buying off the judges, so I'm not sure how this all works.
So what else? So walking along the street, we would see temples like this, and there's a store next door, and there's a temple, and it's just beautiful. And Amur belonged to a village, our driver, and he told us about the fire dance. And we thought he was going to be in it, but he wasn't that day. But we went to his fire dance, his village's fire dance, and we saw there was some regular dancing and storytelling, and then an actual fire dancer that wasn't from the village. They hire him. And then this is the kind of costumes they were wearing throughout the show, and it turned out this young lady was a niece of his. So, but it was just beautiful, really interesting to see all that. And here I am walking into town from where we were staying, and so here's the typical kind of street. And across the street is this beautiful temple, or I can't remember what the building was. Also near us was a rice field walker. I also called it a canyon ridge walk, because there was a canyon on the other side.
There was actually two different walks. One was the rice field walk, and the other one was the ridge walk.
So
we did them both.
Yeah. So beautiful countryside, only motorcycle and people on foot. Walking across rice fields, seeing people work them. What'd you call this?
Iron oxen.
Iron oxen. And then along the way, there's places to stop and eat lunch. And on the way back, we saw these women, and they actually do carry food in baskets on their head. They were very happy to have their picture taken. And then we went to the monkey forest another day, and we actually could walk right there too, about 20 minutes. And there's monkeys that they're protected. They don't seem to be in a fence or anything.
No, it's just a park, and sometimes they wander out of the park, but then the local people shoo them back into the park.
Yeah.
Because they, do create problems when they leave the park, and when they're in the park, they still create problems.
Right. Yeah, we were warned, if you're wearing a backpack, you better zip up everything, because they'll just remove whatever they see.
Yep.
They're very smart.
Some
Take things out of your
have learned
pockets.
to open your backpack too. So.
Yeah. So it was I don't know, a couple hours. It was really interesting. It's also beautiful in there, and this is an older bridge. People aren't using it now, but I was just amazed at how long this has been there, and just how gorgeous it was. This is just a fella we met along the way, just looking at us. So close. And I really loved seeing the little babies, a lot of baby monkeys.
Do you know what kind of monkeys they were?
I don't remember. Do you remember what kind
I'm not
of?
sure.
I'm
But
sure
I
we
would-
could,
I would
yeah.
call them gray monkeys because they're not proboscis and they don't have long tails. So
Yeah. And this is Dirk's friend.
That's a great picture.
So here's the thing. You don't look the monkey in the eye, or else he bares his fangs and hisses or screeches loudly at you, to the point where you say, well, yep, I'm out of here.
So he
Which
left.
happened seconds after this picture was taken.
Yeah. Not fun. And just a beautiful flower there. And here's my batik. And I use tools like this to make a batik painting. I was going to bring it, but I forgot. And I actually bought the tools for making them, and I haven't made one yet, but I thought I would, of course. So I went to a lesson, and I'm not an artist, so the man who was teaching actually kind of drew the lines for me for the bird and the flower, and then I could pick the different colors and paint them on with wax and color and all that kind of stuff. It was a wonderful day of like 3 hours, and look what I had. I felt so good. Anyway, so then we decided to go to Sanur because Ubud was inland, and let's go to the ocean and some sand and all that. And Sanur was okay. Our hotel was, we did stay in a hotel there, and it was, and there's a nice place to walk at night, and I don't remember the beach much. Maybe we weren't there
There
long
wasn't
enough.
much of a beach because Sanur really caters to retired Dutchmen. So there's a lot of them there. But it's a very nice boardwalk, and there's restaurants along the boardwalk and shops and things like that. And it's very nice.
And most importantly,
when it's time to watch the Super Bowl, there's a bar with a big screen TV, and I think Pat and I were the only ones watching
yeah,
the
we
Super
couldn't
Bowl.
believe it. We're the only ones watching. Yeah. Anyway, and then we went snorkeling one day off of this bay. I don't remember much about it. I guess it was okay, but
The snorkeling was okay. It
the
wasn't
view was
great there.
nice, and the sunset. So then we learned that we had made a mistake when we came to Indonesia, or a mistake with our visa anyway. So we had to leave the country in order to come back again. So we decided to go to Singapore, which was a really good idea, except it was Chinese New Year. But anyway.
Can I ask you how you found out you made a mistake? Like, did the authorities come get you?
No.
Well, it was my
He looked-
understanding that you could go to the immigration office and get your visa renewed. Well, you can in the first 3 weeks of your 30-day visa, and in the fourth week, well, you're just out of luck. So you go to the immigration office and he says, I can't renew this. And we had 1 day left, so then we said, well, honey, we're leaving the country. So the choice was, the closest country was East Timor,
Right.
or Singapore, and Singapore was least expensive to travel to, so he said, we're going to Singapore.
Yeah, we stayed
And-
overnight.
And they say, well, it's Chinese New Year, you might not get a room. He says, well, we have to leave. So we left.
So we did, and we got there. Here's another funny airport kind of thing. Anyway, we got there in plenty of time. We were able to get a room very near the bay, the Singapore Bay, and immediately got on a tour around the bay with beautiful views of all the different new facilities that have been built there. This used to be the harbor where the fish came in and where all the trading was, but now it's pretty elegant. This is the famous Lion Bridge, which normally would have a few people, but it's Chinese New Year. Like, we're not going to get on that bridge. And this is the famous Marina Sands Hotel with most people have seen it in movies or something, the three hotels on top of each other, and there's swimming pools on top. It's just massive. So we didn't get...
There was a scene in Crazy Rich Asians.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
And
great.
we wanted to go to the top, but at Chinese New Year, there's just no way they didn't have time to get up there. I mean, the lines were... but we did get to the park. And this place is amazing. It's called Singing Trees. I mean, and it's... Gardens on the Bay. I have a little brochure on it someplace. But it's a botanical garden. And there's this huge area with all these gorgeous trees that light up at night with all different colors and music and glowing.
To be clear, they're not real trees. They're
Oh, yeah. Good point.
cement columns.
And some of them even had upper walkways and such. And when we got there, it was pretty crowded, but we had no trouble seeing what was going on. So it was really one fabulous day. And then we headed back to Bali, to Nusa, which means island, Limbangan. which is a smaller island off of Bali. And it turns out, we found out, the boat taking us there picked us up at the airport and got us back to Sanur, where the boat was. But it turns out, in order to get on the boat, you actually had to roll up your pant legs and walk in the water. And Dirk thought that was a great idea. Anyway, they took our luggage for us. So then we got to Limbagan. There's a lot of villas on the hill, but this is not where we were staying. We were further along in an area which was with a short walk, we could quickly get to the beach. It had lovely little kind of a cabana type rooms with mosquito netting. And the first night we went to the Good Bar and Grill. And this guy was singing and doing the drum, and he was so off key. I couldn't stand it. I said, Dirk, I can't. He said, go up there and sing. So I did.
When he gets to the exciting part of the music, he doesn't drum in beat. He just drums louder and off beat.
And,
So what did you
And
say?
then when he
it's
started
Beatles
singing,
songs.
I said, Pat, get up there. Straighten this guy out.
So did he behave when she was up there?
No, he didn't behave.
But we overpowered him with it. She was singing too. It was better.
Was that his girlfriend?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Well, anyways, this other woman went up there and started helping as well.
Yeah. It was
And
hurtful
moved the
otherwise.
microphone away from this guy. It was hilarious.
So here we are walking back to our place. And then some of the beaches along Limbagan. One of these was called the Secret Beach because there was no road to it or anything, just a little pathway down the road from where we were, which is a dead end. And when I say road, that was the road. Anyway, so we took a long walk one day and got almost halfway around the island. It was just so gorgeous. I won't. Then one day we went to the next island over, which was Panida. And we took a boat there for snorkeling. And look how calm the water is until we started snorkeling, which is not so good for me. But the snorkeling was pretty good anyway.
This is Manta Ray Point, and if you hang around in the water long enough, with all the other snorkelers and all the other boats in close proximity, then you might see a manta ray.
Right.
And
did.
I stayed on the boats, and Pat actually saw a manta ray.
Right. And then we stopped a couple of places in the first place. We saw a lot of other fish too. It was lovely. Another day, we had heard from our waiter where we were staying, or something like that. Anyway, about the how to get to Yellow Bridge, and which is turns out you take a walk or a motorcycle to get to another little island, but also that there was a Hindu festival going on in the area. So we went there, we enjoyed the bridge, and then we waited and waited and waited until the festival. We were walking around and looking. Amazing. These women, gorgeous, and with all dressed up, and there were families along the way, with their mothers, and these are their mothers or sisters. Yeah. And then the men came along with drums and bells, and it was quite the spectacle. Yeah, it was pretty neat. This is a bonsai. No,
banyan tree.
Banyan tree. Big banyan trees all over Asia and worshipped. And there's another example of some of the tributes or the things left for their many gods. So, in Indonesia, any religion is allowed as long as there's one main god. So Bali has a different version of Hinduism because they had to come up with a main god, and I forget the name of it. But anyway, they had to kind of revise. Anyway, yeah, that's true.
And also in Indonesia, Buddhism has a god, not just a teacher. So Buddha is a god in Indonesia because you have to have a god.
Yep. More beautiful temples. This was our last day. We went to the Sunset Beach and saw sunset. So we're running late. If can I continue, or do you feel no? We're almost done, sort of. I know. So we went to Lombok, which was on our way. That was kind of on our way to get to Flores, because we wanted to see the Komodo Dragons. But in Lombok, we took a fast boat to get to Lombok. We were staying in Sengigi, and we took a tour one day. Getting there, this is where we stayed, a tour up north because they talked about waterfalls, which was nice, and sand beaches, rice fields, and here's our black sand beach.
You got your visas renewed?
Yeah, when,
Oh, yeah, when we got
upon
back.
re-entry, because it's visa on arrival in
Okay.
Indonesia for 30 days.
Okay.
So we got to the waterfall place and it was raining, but they had sheds and we waited till it stopped. And there's some waterfalls down there. We started the walk with our guide, a cute little guy. He spoke pretty good English, and all his friends. And they would be aggressive, but he knew what to do about them. What was it about bananas? Anyway, something. Don't show them a banana.
Don't
don't wear
yellow
yellow.
clothing.
That's right.
Because they'll mistake it for banana.
I'm
And
glad
to
I
drive
wasn't
them
one.
away, you have to say, shh, shh. And then that annoys them enough that they go away.
Yeah. So we made it to the.
Could I do
Waterfall.
a brief interject at that point, which is, I volunteer, when you all go away out the front door, there's a box of lots of bananas. It would be helpful, and you help yourselves
Make some banana bread.
take bananas on your way out.
Okay.
Okay. There's also native villages we would see along the way, and here's one of the ones where I stopped, where people, in the native villages we saw, sometimes the elders and young people still live there, but mostly they're used for festivals now. And so this one's one of those, when we see a number of others too. There was an earthquake up in northern Lombok, and this is one of the examples, and now they were encouraging people to build trees with wood so that they wouldn't get
Wood
killed.
and bamboo rather than bricks, because the bricks fall on your head and you get injured.
Yeah, that was
So
interesting.
brick building is out.
Not as, yeah. That the last day I went down to the beach and I was like, wow, this is so cool in Lombok. And I bought some.
Here we go.
I couldn't resist. And then we went to we're gone on the way to the airport and saw a horse and buggy in this town like that, and there was a lot of them. That was kind of strange. It turns out people walk into the town market day to buy a lot of goods, and then they have too much, and so there's all these horse and buggies to take them home. So then we flew from Lombok to Flores, the next island. Flores was actually founded by the Portuguese, and so there are some Catholics there. And
Yes.
Labuan Bajo is the town.
Labuan Bajo, yeah.
Bajo,
Yeah.
thank you. See, I need
And
them.
the reason we're there is because it's in proximity to the Komodo Dragons.
So we stayed at La Cecile, which was high up on the hill. So when you're walking, you get some exercise. And this is the view from the terrace, from where we're eating and such. And many, many islands out into the bay. And here's a lower view. Eating breakfast. And so we wanted to hire a boat to take us to the Komodo Islands to see the Komodo Dragons. And it's a three-day trip, right? So and so we see the dragons and Sand Beach, and actually there were two places we stopped for dragons. And the boats are unusual. I thought, so we expected, and they had one or two sort of bedrooms, but most people sit on this deck and actually sleep on the deck on pads, and you can't stand up. You got to walk.
There's no standing room there.
So I only hit my head 3 times. Not very good at bending over. But the views along the way were beautiful. And here's a real live Komodo dragon that you don't want to get too close to. They are horrible, horrible things. They eat each other. They eat their young. And what else they eat is... But they bite the animal and just leave it until it dies, because their saliva is so poisonous. So you don't want to get anywhere near that. And we had a tour around the area with guides that had big pokey sticks and such. And here's 2 of them. And we saw some of them kind of...
Deter them? The sticks were enough to deter them?
Yeah,
They never actually came after us.
but we were, we stayed
You
far.
wouldn't think that a 10-foot forked stick would be enough to deter a Komodo. Besides, I can't run fast enough to get away from the Komodo.
Yeah.
How fast
So-
were they?
Well, we didn't race
They
them.
barely moved while we were there.
Yeah. I think if they're chasing meat, they were, yeah, but they were,
They're related to alligators, like in Florida. The ones in Florida can reach 30 miles an hour in the sprint for a very short distance. So, you know, if you're the meal, climb a tree.
yeah. And that's what the young do. They live in trees to avoid being eaten by their parents. We stayed overnight in a beautiful bay, and actually were able to go ashore. And then the next day, we climbed this huge hill. It turned out to be a mountain, and we'd climb up, and you'd think, oh, we're almost at the top, and then there'd be another area, and another area. It was fabulous. Unfortunately, when we got back on the boat, my phone dropped in the water, and I lost all those pictures. So this is one I had to get online, but it was a beautiful day. And we also stopped at Pink Sand Beach and spent a nice time relaxing there. So I really loved Flores. This is the room where we were staying, the outside of it, looking down at the bay. And then we're leaving, so we were saying goodbye to some of our waitresses, and we had a really nice time there. Oh, there's one of my shirts. And then the next stop was to go along the highway. I had heard they had a highway that you could take all the way to get to the famous
Three-color lake?
three-color volcanic lakes,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. So we hired a driver. The first thing the driver said, rode like a snake. And I thought, oh, Pat's not going to do well.
So the first day, stop, Dramamine. Oops, I wish I had taken it earlier. But then the rest of the time, I took Dramamine night and morning, and I was fine. So, but yeah, it was, so they said highway. So we stopped in a number of places along the way. It's just gorgeous country. I'll just give you a couple slides here. I mean, and as we're going up these mountains, like, this is so high, and there's a village. There's a village. I mean, and we said, are we going to get to your village, our driver? He said, no, you only can get there by motorcycle. Like, wow. Anyway, this is the spiderweb rice field. So this is a rice field, but they spiderwebbed it. So we stopped there.
What happens is when there's another sun, then he gets a small slice of the rice field here. And they divide it that way, like spokes in the wheel.
This is one of the villages that that's, you know, an ancient or a village, but there were people here in this village. There was a man who's the elder and the young were there. And this gives you some sense of how high up some of these villages are as we went along. And another area where we stopped, and there was a volcanic-looking mountain there. And we got to the place where that we had heard about. Let me get the right.
Homo floresiensis.
Yeah. So, Homo floresiensis, which is a early human, was found in this cave down in below. And we had heard about it. We wanted to come in and learn more. I think there was a fence. And luckily we met some teachers while we were just wandering around who could speak English. And they were telling us all about it and where they'd found them. And there was a museum building that was closed. And they got the key for us, so we were able to go in. It's this one.
So Pat says, well, people won't believe how small this is. I says, lie down on the floor, I'll take your picture. And she did.
So it's so there was Java Man, and then this I can't even say Homo floresiensis, and sometimes they call it the Flores Hobbit. But these are some of the earliest humans that have been ever discovered. Blue Sand Beach. I've got some bluestone beach. I mean, bluestones naturally, just gorgeous. They're harvested for various things, but they keep on coming. So we stopped there and walked around a little bit. Just another beautiful view along the way, and then we and another really cool swinging bridge. It was just there, and I wanted to cross it. And then we finally got to Kalimutu National Park, which is where the 3 volcanic lakes are. And the idea is to get there and to see it at sunrise. So we got up very early and had a cab, I guess, that was already arranged.
No, our driver took us to
our
the
driver. Oh, that's
parking
right.
lots,
Yep.
and we hiked up that trail in the dark, stumbling along.
Thank heavens for flashlights on phones. And here we are, pre-sunrise, getting ready. And then here are some of the volcanic lakes. Now, sometimes one could be blue and one could be green. You had to be a little creative to see the difference in color this time. This is dark green and light green, I think. But it was really beautiful. And this was the last one to be uncovered because of the fog. So
Right.
it was an adventure. And this is when it's daylight. You can see we climbed all the way up like this to this kind of area to see. And there was some kind of a monument on top. Oh, and by the way, when we got there were people there selling stuff. Oh, and remember the woman? So the woman was selling some food, and the monkeys kept.
Yeah, the monkey came along.
She was like, she had a slingshot. like what?
And she was really good with the slingshot.
You never know. Anyway.
The monkey steals the packaged food that she's trying to sell,
Yeah.
is the point.
Oh, she
So
wasn't
that's-
doing it just to be mean. She just.
And that's why she had the slingshots and was taking care of the monkey.
So now we're flying back to Bali, where we went to Kuta, so on the west side here, and relaxed and did not much for the next 7 days. We were staying at the lower part of Kuta, and where it was both tourists and locals, and the locals lived around, so we were sharing our beach. There was a lovely place to eat there. This is what the other more northern shore looks like, beaches just full of people, cars. It was really, we went up there one day and went, oh, I'm glad we didn't go there. And we ate on the beach often at night on these little canopies, lovely little nasi goreng and bami goreng.
Bami goreng, yeah.
Yep.
Rice and noodles, yeah. And the
And
beer. Don't
then
forget
one
the beer.
day we went to Uluwatu, and this is a Hindu center, a religious center. Where was I here? Oops, wrong way. Way down here. So we had a taxi that took us down here. And so it's right at the edge of Bali. And
Where they have the fire dancing at night.
they might. I don't remember fire dancing, but there was a big arena that we didn't attend where there was a show.
Yeah.
The
fire dancing you saw in previous slides was in Ubud.
But
And,
they did have a show there, so I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of it. But we were, enjoying the sunset. It's very well known for a beautiful sunset. And then you can talk about the English.
So,
Mr. English.
a tall white person happens by and they start speaking English to you. So that little fellow on the right there, spoke really good English, actually, surprisingly good, and wanted to practice more. And I asked him, well, what else do you study in school? And he says, well, Japanese. So I said hello in Japanese. And he said, and Arabic. So these are the 2 hardest languages in the world to learn. So in Arabic, I said hello in Arabic, and he looked at me in astonishment and says, are you Muslim? Because Muslims do all their worship, I guess, in Arabic.
Yeah.
I didn't know. So I allowed as how I wasn't Muslim.
And then we went back to Kuta and enjoyed yourselves more, walking, shopping, just relaxing, enjoying meeting some people. And I believe this is our last sunset.
Beautiful.
Yep. And then, so again, these are the places we went. We started in Jakarta, went up to Kalimantan for did you see
Borneo.
in Borneo, yep. And then back to Jakarta to go to Yogyakarta, right there. And then to Bali, up to Singapore, back to Bali, and then Flores. So
How long was that whole trip?
about 2 months, I think like January 10th to March 10th, something like that. Questions?
Did you have any trouble with the foods? Particularly vegetables and fruits.
I was being careful about salads. I recall I wasn't eating fresh raw food. I've been less careful since then in Southeast Asia, and I haven't had a problem.
Oh, good.
But it was the first time. So
Yeah.
mostly we ate cooked food, as I
We
recall.
were careful with the water. There's bottled water everywhere, and Pat's Life Straw. I got gastrointestinal upsets in Yogyakarta, brushing my teeth, and I rinsed my mouth from the tap.
And it said don't use the water, but it was like a really tiny little thing. He didn't see it.
So, but you know, it's
Oh, my
easy
window.
because I came prepared with pills from the doctor. But what I've discovered is you go to any pharmacy and say, oh, I have a tummy upset, and they give you the pills. You know, it's like going to Mexico and
Yeah, you can
you
get.
have your choice of pills to take those at your state.
What about the food in terms of the good side of things?
I love Indonesian food. So
Yeah.
we
Nice
were.
and spicy?
Well,
You
it's not
couldn't
hot
either.
spicy, it's
No?
flavorful spicy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The food was.
Yeah, there's hot spicy stuff you can add to it,
Right.
but they don't
Right.
serve it that way. It's on the side.
It took a while. Some places, coffee was interesting because the first place, or one of the places we went to, they had the coffee grinds. So I put the coffee and then stirred. I thought it was instant coffee, but no, you're just supposed to hot water and wait for a while until the grinds go down to the bottom. You know, you had to. So there's a few changes like that. Any other questions?
Yeah. Did you see evidence of sea level rise and the fact that Jakarta is moving?
I didn't see that. I know that's true, but
Yeah, so much water is pumped out of the ground around Jakarta that actually the city is sinking. And in one of those slides next to the slums where you saw the picture of the Panisi boats in the water there's actually a concrete wall there that they have built so that the water stays out of the slums there. So that's not global water rising, that is actually Jakarta sinking. So they're moving the capital city, Jakarta, they're moving the capital city to
Kalimantan.
Borneo, in the middle of Kalimantan, actually.
yeah, I think somewhere
A
like
little bit
this.
farther north.
Yeah,
It's in the center.
yeah.
So they're moving the whole capital city of the entire country to Borneo.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Would you say, it seemed like you were the only kind of Americans, were there not
Oh,
Europeans?
by no means, by no means. There's all sorts of tourists.
Yeah,
All sorts.
especially in Ubud. Ubud, we're like, no
In
one wanted to
Bali-
take our picture there, but
In
some other-
Bali, it's about half locals and half tourists.
Yeah, and a lot of Australians, as he had mentioned.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting is if you're in Java, in Jakarta or Yogyakarta, you meet tourists as a matter of course because it's always fun to speak your own language. After a while, you get a little bit tired of trying to communicate and.
Well, it's hard to make friends in the other language.
So you meet people and you swap stories. In Bali, less so because there's so many people speaking English. Yeah, a lot of people.
So I guess in summary, we love the diversity of Indonesia and the friendliness of the people. They were smiling. Family is very important to them, and they stay together. What else did I want to say? We'd been cautioned to stay away from the most restrictive Muslim areas, so we did. And we learned, that was my first Southeast Asia. So we learned how to travel, eat, shop, and do laundry economically, not relying on hotels and such for all the services. So, anyway.
Thank you.
Oh.